Glad to have joining us now Joe diGenova, legal analyst and former U.S. attorney to the District of Columbia. Joe, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Nice to have you. So the Democratic memo finally released, and that's the one that Adam Schiff has been pushing for. The Justice Department, the FBI getting in there a chance to put a couple of redactions in that thing, and it's been released. And the Democrats say that this vindicates their talking point, that this investigation, this FISA warrant against Carter Page was rightly granted, and that there was no problem whatsoever with it. What'd you make of their memo?
Oh, it's a silly memo, and it proves its own silliness by making the most glaring omission possible. It makes no mention of the McCabe testimony that but for the Steele dossier, the affidavit in support of the warrant to the FISA court never would have been submitted. They don't even address it. They just ignore it completely, and it decimates their memo. In addition, the FBI and the Department of Justice, according to the Democrats' memo itself, never told the court that the source of the Steele dossier was the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee. And finally, the Carter Page warrant was initially denied in June of 2016, and then it was only granted once the Steele dossier information was included in the affidavit. The Democrats are playing a very nasty, political, dangerous game with national security, but it's par for the course. The Democratic Party has become a shill for every anti-American element in the world.
You know, the Democrats insist that there's only one portion of the Steele dossier that was used, and it was the thing that everyone has corroborated, that Carter Page took a trip to Moscow. They're saying nothing else in the dossier was relied upon.
So did your grandmother. Useless information of no value whatsoever, I mean, just let him say it. I mean, it's perfectly legal activity. There's nothing wrong with going to Moscow.
Now, central to this is, why would you include a piece of crappy evidence if the rest of it was so good?
It was needed. Remember, the application was denied by the court initially. And so the Bureau went looking around for stuff to do and discovered, hey, wait a minute, we paid these guys. We were considering paying Steele to give us a dossier. What's he got? Let's take a look at it. And, of course, Bruce Orr had already told them through his wife, through senior people in the Justice Department, that they had this extra bit of information. So they used it in the affidavit. They got the warrant. All of these people should have lawyers, and there should be a grand jury going on about it. I shall see whether or not Rod Rosenstein has the cojones to appoint a grand jury. Maybe he's already done it. If he has, there's a way for him to say that, but apparently he doesn't know how.
Hey, Joe, look, I'm mystified as a former federal officer who had to basically stipulate facts for any number of reasons. What are we looking at here regarding the very thing? I mean, if Rob Rosenstein actually has the ability and the balls to do something about this, what are we looking at regarding a follow-up investigation? Because clearly, you know, you've pointed out, and I think the memo just digs the Democrats' hole deeper. They left out material facts from the FISA court regarding the sourcing of the dossier, and frankly, as we know now, people essentially committed some level of form of perjury. So what would be the follow-on investigative steps, and what would be the potential penalties?
Well, at this point, we need a federal grand jury authorized to issue subpoenas and take testimony under oath, under penalty of perjury. And that would include testimony from all senior Obama DOJ officials, all senior FBI officials during the Obama Justice Department, all lower-level FBI and DOJ officials who, while not policymakers, did things, heard things, and saw things. You put everybody who could give you any piece of information in front of a grand jury to investigate the following: conspiracy to deny the civil rights of Mr. Page, of Donald Trump, of a series of senior officials, and then you get into one of the most important things of all, unmasking. And even if the unmasking was justified as a matter of counterintelligence policy, who leaked the product of the unmasking? All of those leaks were felonies. Who leaked the president's private phone calls with foreign leaders? All felonies. I assume that the 27 leaks that the Attorney General said were already under investigation includes all of those things. And maybe in those leaks that they're investigating, they have a grand jury underway investigating the conduct of former FBI and senior DOJ officials. We have no evidence of that yet, however. All we know is that they're investigating the leaks. Who they're investigating, we don't know.
And Joe, there's a whole bunch of former FBI and DOJ officials now, to include Peter Strzok and Bruce Orr, who've both been demoted in their roles, and also Andrew McCabe has retired early now, forced to retire early. It's through that lens that we should be viewing all of this information, and the Democrats don't seem to even recognize the fact that there have been people
they don't want to. It's a very difficult fact for them. You notice that in none of their statements they ever talk about the demotions, the firings, the early retirement. All is well with them. See, it's okay if you're a Democrat. It's perfectly okay to destroy the institution of the Department of Justice and the FBI in service to your party. This is what people like Adam Schiff do. And then there's this other guy from New Jersey who was on yesterday, this guy Hines, this congressman from New Jersey. He is slick and nasty and corrupt. I mean, politically corrupt. Awful to watch him. I mean, boy, these guys, the one thing the Democrats have learned very well, how to slither.
Well, let me ask you one more other thing. I think we've had this conversation before, but I want to double back over it. And it's regarding the fact that there was a judge involved here, at least one, granting this FISA warrant against Carter Page. Wouldn't a judge smell out the flimsiness of something like this? Wouldn't they ask a couple of probing questions?
Remember that a FISA warrant is not a criminal warrant. It's actually a lower standard. I hear all these people talking about how high the FISA standard is. The FISA standard is a nothing burger compared to a regular real search warrant. A real search warrant, you got to have specifics, you got to have details. What's the crime? Where's the thing you're looking for? Who did it? Give me the basis for it, and give me reliable, credible information. The FISA warrant can be based on a lot of flimsy stuff, but one thing it can't be based on is a lack of information. You have to ask yourself this question. Why did the court deny the June application for a FISA warrant on Carter Page? Because the information that was in there was insufficient. That proves conclusively that the judges do look at this stuff. And when they were hoodwinked, when the judge who granted this warrant was hoodwinked, they were hoodwinked for one reason: the dossier, which was totally uncorroborated, unreliable information, and according to the fabulous James Comey, it was not credible and salacious. What the salacious has to do with anything, I don't know why he even included that. That's a legally irrelevant word.
Amazing that it has such a lower threshold for a FISA warrant when it seems like it's a lot more invasive, actually, than just checking somebody's boxes in their home.
I couldn't agree more, but the standard is actually lower.
Let's more with you, Joe, in just a moment on this and also on that Broward County Sheriff. I want to ask you about him and his failures of...
Hey, Joe, Tony here. I got a question for you relating to the overall tenor of where this is going, and it released to the sheriff in Broward County. My question to you is: can the investigators investigate themselves fairly? I mean, you're talking about here a lot of folks who were very loyal to the Clintons inside the FBI and the Department of Justice. So can there be an investigative team able to do that? And frankly, that leads to what needs to be done about Broward. But let's start with that.
The Inspector General is doing a good job. He's the one who discovered all the Strzok Page text messages. He's revealed those to Congress and eventually to the FBI director. I have ultimate confidence in Mike Horowitz. With regard to the follow-up grand jury, that can be handled by DOJ grand juries. If they want to have a special counsel, that's fine with me, too. The bottom line is there has to be a grand jury at these points. Susan Rice, Ben Rhodes, John Brennan, James Clapper, all of those people have to be put under oath in a federal grand jury. None of this sending letters from your lawyers. Susan Rice responded to the letter from Grassley and Lindsey Graham by sending a letter signed by her lawyer. That's nonsense. That's not a statement. She needs to come in and testify under oath.
Right. Well, this goes back now to the accountability of Broward County.
Yeah, and meanwhile, in Broward County, I want to play this audio real quick. This is Sheriff Scott Israel telling Jake Tapper this weekend that the failures of his department to include taking all of those many calls about Nicholas Cruz, the shooter in Parkland, and also his deputies failing to enter the building are not reflective of his leadership. In fact, his leadership has been amazing. Listen to this.
Jake, I could only take responsibility for what I knew about. I exercised my due diligence. I've given amazing leadership to this agency.
Amazing leadership?
I've worked... Yes, Jake. There's a lot of things we've done throughout this. This is you don't measure a person's leadership by a deputy not going into these deputies received the training they needed.
Maybe you measure somebody's leadership by whether or not they protect the community.
Joe, he sounds like he's spinning out of control here.
Well, this is a small man in a big job. And what you have watched unfold on television is a man totally incapable of leadership. He's a local politician, because sheriffs are all politicians. He happens to have some law enforcement background. But he has made a terrible, terrible mess of a situation by insisting on thrusting himself into the public limelight. And, for example, at that memorial service, at the beginning of all of this, he started criticizing Dana Loesch, the NRA. What does that have to do with anything? His department failed miserably. His officer showed up and didn't do anything. Not only that, I mean, but I will say this for Sheriff Israel. At least he's on television answering questions. You know who's not on television or holding news conferences? Christopher Wray, the FBI director. I saw him on a milk carton the other day. He's disappeared completely. He is a disgrace to the FBI. These failings, remember, the FBI got the YouTube video, did nothing. They get the crisis call on January 5th to their public access line, they do nothing. And what does the FBI director do? He issues a small statement, which doesn't even say it comes from him. It says it comes from the FBI. And then 6 days later, after the statement, he sends out the new acting deputy director of the FBI to answer some questions. Where is the FBI director? This is when the President of the United States should pick up the phone or have his chief of staff pick up the phone and say, Mr. Wray, I want you over here in an hour. I want you to explain what you're going to do about this and how you're going to fix it. This FBI director is nothing more than a political hack. He got the job because he never offends anybody.
Joe, can these citizens who've been impacted by this shooting, in light of all of these failures by the government, sue the government for its failures?
Of course they can sue. Anybody can sue. The issue is, can they recover? In the case of instances like this, it's extremely difficult to recover. But what you do is you sue because the government doesn't want to go through discovery and have all sorts of time wasted on litigation, and they give you money. And all of these people should be paid money up front by the sheriff's department, the county government, and the state government. I'm sure that the governor could get a bill passed to compensate all these families. But the real problem here is the Broward County Sheriff's Office and the FBI did not do their jobs. We never hold public officials accountable. Christopher Wray should be made to publicly stand in front of a group of reporters and answer questions, truthfully answer the questions, and then submit his resignation. This happened on his watch. This perfectly coiffed, Joseph A. Bank closed FBI director needs his comeuppance, and that comeuppance should be resignation or firing.
Well, I think he shops at JCPenney's, but that's a different subject altogether, Joe. But anyway, back on the subject. I don't understand why we just don't summarily fire people who fail. I mean, I don't get it anymore, Joe. I mean, these are serial failures on both sides.
Couldn't agree more. We have no history or culture of that in this country. We let everything go by the books. But if these students want to demonstrate for something, they should demonstrate for the firing of the sheriff and the FBI director.
Hear, hear.
Yeah, and let's not give the government more power when it can't even use the power it has correctly. Joe diGenova, thank you. Really appreciate you joining us this morning.
You bet.
Thanks, Joe.
Guys.